Most people believe attraction begins with beauty, but beauty alone does not explain obsession. It does not explain why some women remain in a man's mind for years, while others slowly fade from his memory, no matter how attractive they were. Because the deepest forms of attraction are rarely logical. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And nowhere is this more visible than in human attraction. A man may believe he is drawn to a woman because of her appearance, her voice, or her personality, but often something far deeper is happening beneath the surface. There are certain feminine energies so psychologically powerful that they bypass a man's rational mind entirely. He cannot fully explain why he feels attached, why he keeps replaying conversations, why her presence lingers in silence, why she feels emotionally different from everyone else. Because men do not become obsessed with women alone. They become obsessed with the emotional experience a woman awakens inside them. A feeling, a tension, a forgotten part of themselves suddenly brought back to life. And when a woman embodies this kind of feminine energy, she no longer feels ordinary in his mind. She becomes symbolic. Not because she chases attention, not because she performs femininity better than other women, but because her energy activates unconscious longing he does not fully understand. Jung believed that people often project hidden desires and unresolved emotions onto those who awaken something deep within them. This is why certain women become almost impossible to forget, not through manipulation, not through effort, but through presence, emotional depth, mystery, and psychological contrast. In this video, we will explore the 7 feminine energies that secretly obsess a man's mind, and why these energies create such powerful emotional attachment. Because once a man experiences this kind of feminine energy, he rarely forgets the woman who made him feel it. Feminine energy number 1. She feels emotionally unpredictable. One of the most powerful feminine energies that obsess a man is emotional unpredictability. Not emotional chaos, not manipulation, not playing games, but emotional depth that cannot be fully mapped or predicted. Most people today reveal themselves too quickly. Their moods are repetitive. Their reactions become familiar. Their emotional patterns feel easy to read. And while familiarity creates comfort, it rarely creates obsession. Because the human mind does not obsess over what it completely understands. It obsesses over what continues to stimulate curiosity. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Emotional unpredictability creates that reaction. A woman who carries emotional range feels psychologically alive. One moment she is playful and warm, another moment reflective and distant, soft without weakness, confident without hardness. She does not perform emotions to keep a man interested. She simply allows herself to exist fully within her emotional reality. And that emotional movement creates something powerful inside a man's mind: attention. Because the moment a man feels he cannot completely predict a woman emotionally, his mind begins investing energy trying to understand her more deeply. He starts replaying interactions, analyzing small changes in tone, remembering moments that felt emotionally charged. Not because she manipulated him, but because uncertainty naturally intensifies psychological focus. Neuroscience even supports this. Unexpected emotional experiences stimulate dopamine, the chemical strongly connected to desire, anticipation, and emotional attachment. Predictability relaxes the brain, but emotional contrast keeps the mind engaged. This is why some women become unforgettable without trying. Their emotional presence feels layered, alive, difficult to reduce into something simple. And when a man feels he has not fully figured her out, attraction often deepens instead of fading. Because mystery is not created through silence alone. It is created when a woman possesses emotional depth large enough that a man continues discovering new parts of her over time. And that discovery process can quietly become addictive. But emotional unpredictability alone is not enough, because while emotional contrast captures a man's attention, emotional self-control is what makes him emotionally attached. Feminine energy number 2. She does not emotionally chase. One of the rarest feminine energies today is emotional non-neediness. A woman who desires connection but does not emotionally chase it. Most people unknowingly destroy attraction the moment they become emotionally dependent on attention. They overtext, over-explain, over-pursue reassurance, and slowly the connection stops feeling natural. It starts feeling heavy. Because desperation always weakens emotional tension. But a woman who remains emotionally grounded creates the opposite effect. She does not panic when a man pulls away slightly. She does not abandon her standards to maintain attention. She does not make emotional availability her entire identity. And this emotional stability becomes psychologically powerful. Carl Jung believed that true individuation begins when a person stops seeking completion through others. He once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." A woman who embodies this energy does not need constant validation to feel valuable, and men feel this immediately. Because when a woman is emotionally centered within herself, her attention begins to feel meaningful instead of freely available, and human psychology naturally values what feels emotionally scarce. This creates a subtle shift inside a man's mind. Instead of feeling emotionally responsible for maintaining her interest, he begins investing emotionally on his own. He wonders what she's thinking, whether she is losing interest, whether another man could replace him emotionally, and that uncertainty quietly intensifies attachment, because obsession often grows in spaces where certainty disappears. A woman who does not emotionally chase creates psychological tension without effort, not by acting cold, not by pretending not to care, but by having a life, an identity, and an emotional center that exists independently of male attention. This is what makes her presence feel rare. She is open, but not emotionally dependent, warm, but not desperate to be chosen. And paradoxically, the less emotionally needy she becomes, the safer she feels to a man psychologically. Because emotional self-control signals inner stability, and stability creates trust. But emotional independence alone does not fully obsess a man, because eventually attraction deepens through something even more powerful than scarcity, the feeling of being deeply understood by someone who truly sees you. Feminine energy number 3. She makes him feel deeply seen. One of the most addictive feminine energies is the ability to make a man feel deeply seen. Not admired superficially, not validated endlessly, but psychologically understood. Most men move through life emotionally unnoticed. People respond to what they provide, what they achieve, what role they play, but very few people truly pay attention to who they are beneath the surface. And because of this, many men silently carry emotional loneliness they never speak about. Carl Jung once wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." A woman who possesses emotional awareness can often sense things a man never explicitly says. The tension behind his confidence, the exhaustion beneath his discipline, the insecurity hidden underneath his composure. And when she responds to those unspoken parts without judgment, something powerful happens psychologically. He feels emotionally recognized, not for what he performs, but for what he actually is. And that experience becomes difficult to forget, because people rarely become obsessed with those who simply flatter them. They become obsessed with those who make them feel emotionally understood. This is why deep feminine presence affects men so strongly. A woman who listens carefully, who notices emotional shifts, who pays attention to silence as much as words, creates emotional imprinting. A man begins associating her presence with relief, safety, psychological openness. He feels he can lower emotional armor around her without being diminished for it. And once that emotional association forms, attachment deepens rapidly. Because the human mind naturally returns to environments where it feels emotionally accepted, especially men who spend most of their lives feeling emotionally guarded. This is also why superficial attraction fades quickly. Beauty captures attention, but emotional recognition captures memory. A woman who truly sees a man creates emotional experiences that linger long after conversations end. He replays moments with her privately, not because she tried to control him, but because she made him feel understood in ways that are emotionally rare. And when emotional recognition combines with emotional mystery, a much deeper form of obsession begins to emerge. Feminine energy number 4. She creates mystery without trying. One of the most misunderstood feminine energies is mystery. Most people think mystery is created through distance, silence, or manipulation. But real mystery is something much deeper. It is the feeling that there are parts of a woman a man cannot fully access all at once. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind is naturally drawn toward what remains incomplete. He once wrote, "The unconscious constantly seeks expression, and anything the mind cannot fully resolve tends to linger psychologically." This is why mystery creates obsession. Not because a woman hides herself artificially, but because she does not reveal every layer of herself immediately. Today, many people overshare constantly. Every thought is explained, every emotion is exposed, every moment is documented for attention. And while this creates visibility, it often destroys psychological tension. Because once the mind feels it completely understands someone, curiosity begins to fade. But a woman who naturally carries mystery creates the opposite effect. There is always something slightly unresolved about her presence, a depth not fully explained, an emotion not fully spoken, a silence that says more than words. And this keeps a man mentally engaged long after she leaves the room. He wonders what she is truly feeling, what exists beneath her calmness, whether he fully understands her yet. And those unanswered emotional questions quietly become addictive. Because the mind tends to obsess over what feels emotionally unfinished. This is why subtlety is often more powerful than full exposure. What is partially hidden stimulates imagination, and imagination intensifies emotional attachment far more deeply than obvious certainty ever can. A mysterious woman does not try to appear unattainable.
She simply understands that emotional depth unfolds naturally over time. She allows discovery instead of immediate access. And that gradual unfolding creates psychological tension that many men cannot easily forget, especially in a world where everything has become instant, loud, and emotionally predictable. Because what feels rare emotionally often becomes unforgettable mentally. But while mystery keeps a man psychologically engaged, something even more powerful determines whether he emotionally trusts her deeply: her ability to remain emotionally calm in a reactive world.
Feminine energy. Number 5. She remains emotionally calm. One of the most powerful feminine energies a man can experience is emotional calmness. Not emotional suppression, not coldness, but the ability to feel deeply without becoming emotionally chaotic. Most people today react impulsively to everything. A delayed message creates anxiety. A disagreement becomes emotional escalation. A moment of uncertainty turns into overthinking and emotional pressure. And over time, this constant emotional instability becomes exhausting. Because while emotional intensity can create short-term attraction, emotional steadiness creates long-term psychological attachment. Carl Jung once observed, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Emotionally calm women understand this instinctively. They do not immediately react to every emotional impulse. They pause, they observe, they regulate themselves before projecting emotion outward. And this creates a powerful psychological effect on men, because her presence changes the emotional atmosphere around her. A man begins feeling less defensive, less pressured, less emotionally trapped. Her presence feels grounding instead of draining. And in modern relationships, that feeling is incredibly rare. Most men spend their lives surrounded by emotional noise, demands, pressure, conflict, emotional unpredictability. But a woman who remains centered during emotional tension creates something the male nervous system deeply craves: peace. And peace is psychologically addictive. Because eventually, a man stops associating her with emotional work and starts associating her with emotional relief. This is where attachment quietly deepens. Not through dramatic passion, but through emotional regulation. A calm woman also becomes difficult to manipulate emotionally. She does not collapse under inconsistency. She does not panic during silence. She does not seek reassurance every time uncertainty appears. And that emotional self-control signals inner strength. Not loud strength, not performative independence, but the quieter strength of someone who is emotionally secure within herself. Men instinctively trust this kind of energy, because emotional calmness communicates maturity, safety, and stability simultaneously. And when a man feels emotionally safe around a woman, his emotional defenses begin lowering naturally. This is why emotionally grounded women often stay in a man's mind longer than emotionally dramatic ones. Drama captures attention briefly, but emotional peace creates lasting attachment. And once a man begins associating a woman with emotional peace, he starts craving her presence in ways he may not fully understand himself. But emotional calmness alone is still not enough to create deep obsession, because eventually, a man becomes most attached to the woman who feels emotionally alive even without him. Feminine energy number 6. She feels complete without him. One of the most magnetic feminine energies is inner fulfillment. A woman who genuinely enjoys her own existence becomes psychologically unforgettable to many men. Not because she tries to appear independent, but because her life already feels emotionally alive before a relationship enters it. Most people unknowingly make attraction feel transactional. They look to relationships to escape loneliness, to fill emotional emptiness, to finally feel valuable through someone else's attention. But when a woman quietly enjoys her own life, something changes psychologically. Her energy stops feeling needy and starts feeling expansive. Carl Jung once wrote, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." A fulfilled woman carries meaning within herself. She has private joys, private rituals, private emotional rhythms that exist independently of validation. She can enjoy silence without needing distraction. She can experience happiness without immediately needing an audience for it. And men feel this deeply, because her presence no longer communicates, "Complete me." It communicates, "I already have an inner world. You are being invited into it." And that distinction changes everything psychologically. A man becomes curious about her life, her mind, her emotional world. He begins feeling that losing access to her would mean losing access to a rare emotional experience. This is why fulfilled women often create stronger attachment than women constantly seeking attention. Attention-seeking creates stimulation, but inner fulfillment creates gravity. A woman who feels emotionally alive on her own naturally becomes more selective with her energy. She does not cling to every connection. She does not overinvest immediately. She does not shape her identity around being desired. And paradoxically, this often intensifies male obsession, because the less dependent she feels emotionally, the more valuable her emotional attention becomes. Men instinctively sense when a woman is choosing them freely instead of emotionally needing them. And free choice always feels more powerful than dependency. This also explains why some women remain unforgettable after relationships end. Their energy was never built entirely around the relationship itself. They carried emotional richness before it began and continue carrying it after it ends. That emotional continuity leaves a deep psychological impression, because men rarely forget women who seemed emotionally whole before they arrived. But the deepest feminine energy of all goes even further than emotional fulfillment. It awakens something ancient inside a man's unconscious mind itself. Feminine energy, number 7. She awakens his unconscious longing. The deepest feminine energy is not beauty, not mystery, not emotional contrast. It is the ability to awaken unconscious longing inside a man. Carl Jung believed that every man carries an inner feminine image within the unconscious mind. He called this the anima. The anima represents everything a man often disconnects from within himself: emotion, intuition, sensitivity, softness, vulnerability, depth. And when a woman naturally embodies these qualities in an emotionally grounded way, something profound happens psychologically. She stops feeling like just another person. She becomes symbolic. Jung once wrote, "The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate." This is why certain women feel almost fated to men. Not because destiny magically created the connection, but because she activates emotional forces already sleeping inside his unconscious mind. A man suddenly feels emotions he cannot fully explain: restlessness, longing, emotional fascination, psychological pull. He thinks about her during silence, replays moments repeatedly, feels emotionally affected long after interactions end, because she is no longer simply triggering attraction, she is awakening forgotten parts of himself. This is where obsession becomes deeper than desire. Desire focuses on possession, but unconscious longing focuses on transformation. A man may become obsessed with a woman because being around her changes how he experiences himself emotionally. He feels more open, more alive, more emotionally connected to parts of himself he normally suppresses. And that emotional awakening becomes difficult to replace. This is why men often cannot explain certain attachments logically. On the surface, the relationship may not even appear extraordinary, but psychologically something much deeper was activated beneath conscious awareness. A woman who awakens unconscious longing creates emotional imprinting at the deepest level, not through manipulation, not through control, but through emotional authenticity, presence, femininity, and psychological depth. And once a man experiences that kind of feminine energy, he rarely forgets the woman who awakened it inside him.
Conclusion: why certain women become impossible to forget. At the deepest level, obsession is rarely about beauty alone. It is about emotional imprinting. Carl Jung believed that the most powerful human experiences are the ones that awaken unconscious parts of ourselves we did not even realize were sleeping. And this is why certain women remain unforgettable in a man's mind. Not because they chased harder, not because they tried to become irresistible, but because their feminine energy created psychological impact. They made him feel curiosity, emotional tension, peace, longing, depth, and most importantly, they made him feel emotionally alive. A woman who carries emotional unpredictability, mystery, calmness, presence, inner fulfillment, and unconscious depth does more than attract a man. She alters his emotional reality. And once a person changes how someone experiences themselves internally, forgetting them becomes incredibly difficult. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." This is why obsession often feels confusing. A man believes he is obsessed with a woman, when in reality, he is obsessed with the emotional world she awakened inside him. The truth is, the women men remember forever are rarely the loudest. They are rarely the ones who demanded attention most aggressively. They are the women who carried something emotionally real in a world filled with performance. Because authentic feminine energy is not loud, it is felt. And when it is deeply felt, it leaves a psychological imprint that time alone cannot easily erase. Thank you for watching Stoic Wisdom today. If this video resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to us for more deep psychological insights into human nature, attraction, masculinity, femininity, and emotional mastery. And tell me in the comments, which feminine energy do you think affects men the most and why? Until next time, stay calm, stay grounded, stay stoic.